folks, this is GreenXI welcoming you right back to Let's Play Higurashi. This is episode 194. In the last episode, it's got to be like 2 years ago now, right? We finished off the main arc, the main series. We finished the 8th arc where Rika finally escaped the sort of murderous death time loop of Hinamizawa. I'm surprised I remember the name of that. So last July 2022, a new arc came to Steam. It's not a new arc. It wasn't a new arc at the time. It was just, that's when it came out on Steam. And we are now going to finally get on with it. This is arc number 9. I think I know what's coming. I've read the manga. I've seen the anime. I think I know what's coming now that she's escaped the time loop and she should be happy days for the rest of her life, right? So let's pick. I think we'll go for English for some reason. It might be for the best. Okay, I'm looking for some options or settings before we get going. So, oh yes, the cicadas are starting. I love it. Wow, when they cry, Rai. I think that's how it's pronounced. Wow, look at that in the background is the old sort of drawing. The game should be redone, I think. It's just this haven't been redone. So, okay, config. Let's kick things off with that. Message speed, whatever. Auto mode, message speed. Text box transparency. Nothing I want to allow skip and read text. I mean, yeah, put it on, but we won't be using it because we'll be reading as we go. Auto hide user interface on, yeah. Right click functionality would be hide window. Okay. Display confirmation boxes. I don't know what that means. Character sprites. Definitely the updated ones. Because God knows you don't want the ugliness of the old ones. Look at them. No offense. And we're going to go full screen. There we go. We got it. I'm hoping this looks okay now. I'll check it after I've recorded this first episode, and then next time we'll fix it if it's screwed. So, okay. I could do, start obviously. So I know what's coming. I won't spoil it for you guys. Oh, there's 3 different scenarios you can choose between. I don't know what they are. We're going to go from top to bottom. Just makes more sense to me. Higurashi. The worst option. This is a tale of Furude, Rika. Oh my god, that's a good start. We played Umineko no longer. I was going to say Erika. Reaching the summer of 1983, her power allows her to choose one of many worlds, but is this world truly the best one for her? The difficulty here is malicious, for all you dear connoisseurs who prefer it that way. Okay, so this one is actually plotty. I get the impression, looking at those names, I don't know for certain, that they're sort of, the other two are, not spin-offy, but sort of fillery. There was some manga and they were really short, so I imagine they're really short in this one as well. So, we're going for Higurashi, the only one of the 3, I think, that is actually plot and what happens after she escapes the time loop. So let's go for it. I'll laugh. Oh, so weird being back. Bread rained down from the heavens. Some lamented that it was not meat. Meat rained down from the heavens. Some lamented that they preferred bread. God descended down from the heavens. Until I know what will make you all happy, water shall rain down. Frederica Burncastle. Okay. This is a work of fiction and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, we know. Obviously, it's not real. I mean, yeah. Oh, but yeah, hearing the cicadas and seeing that backdrop again, it's amazing. The cicadas chorus had been growing increasingly lively. Is that the same font? I don't know. The strange weather during that never-ending June had been hot enough to make us feel like summer had come early. But even so, it was still only June. Once we got closer to summer in July, the season graced us with even more summery weather. Nice, I'd love some more sun. It's the end of summer over here. Today, to fulfill my dream, we all went to play at the swimming pool. I mean weather-wise. The dream might have seemed humble at first, but I didn't have to look back on the hundreds of years journey it took to achieve it anymore. This is proving that it is after she escaped. Still, I decided I shouldn't forget about it. For many people, this was a perfectly ordinary day, but for me, it had taken so many years of wandering just to get here that it made me feel faint. And remembering it made this seemingly average, regular life fill me with such profound happiness. Wow! Not bringing a camera today must be Mion Sonozaki's greatest failure. Oh, I don't need a camera. I've burned this into my memory already. When I close my eyelids, I can still see how cute Keiichi looks. How? Gah! Don't look at them, don't! I'll file your eyelids off your face. Such a gruesome game, even when it's not the gruesome parts. That's what you get for forgetting to bring your swimsuit to the pool. And the whole ruckus about you putting on those shady swim trunks too. From beginning to end, you reap what you sow. Let me move my mic a sec. There we go. Should be a bit better, I think. Keiichi, you should thank me. If she hadn't brought those swan underpants, your swan would have been swinging all over. I've never heard her called a swan before. Nipa! Boy, was that a joy to behold. I didn't plan anything specific for today, and just when I was thinking we'd play some nice quiet pool games, oh, I'm sure you was, love. Well, with this group, it would be stranger if something didn't happen. No, it's definitely wrong. If you hadn't planned anything, you wouldn't have bothered to bring those embarrassing swan underpants here in the first place. You were scheming, looking for some excuse to get me to wear them, I'm sure of it. But the day was really fun, so I'm totally satisfied. I am. It certainly was fun. On that point, I quite agree. Sadako smiled at me, looking for my agreement. So I sent her back just as brilliant a smile, expressing just how much fun all the romping about today had been. Oh, you know, I've seen these characters and stuff again. It just makes me realise that it is better than Umineko. It really is. I like Umineko, don't get me wrong, but this is my all-time favourite anime visual novel manga. As we all reminisced on our romp at the pool today, we got on our bikes and started on our way home. Hinamizawa didn't have any pools, so we'd gone to a public pool in Akonamaya, the city next door. There was an elevation difference between the two communities, and while going downhill had been very pleasant, we had a long trip upward on our way back. For Hinamizawa children at the zenith of their energy, it wasn't much of a chore, but we naturally fell silent as we quietly pedalled up the hill. Seeing everyone so silent made me want to screw things up somehow. Messing with Sadako at times like these was so much fun for me that you could call it the very purpose of my existence. I pedalled harder, caught up to Sadako's bicycle as she pedalled in silence, and gave her a nudge in the shoulder. Rika! Meep! After pretending to be mean to Sadako, I sped up. Of course, she sped up too and chased after me. Sadako struggled to somehow nudge me back, but I was no slouch either. Our speeds naturally increased, and we began to quickly pass the others in the group. What's this? A race? This old man won't lose either. You shouldn't fool around on the road. It's dangerous, Rika-chan, Sadako-chan. She's not wrong. This was a public road, and cars sometimes came and went. But we'd lived here a long time, so we knew not many cars came around at this hour. Rika? A car's come in. Meep. I won't fall for that trick. So when Sadako said that, I thought she was just trying to distract me. A car horn. When I heard it, I realised Sadako's warning wasn't the trick. But it was so sudden that I was overtaken with surprise. When I looked in front of me, the car was right there. I panicked and violently swung my handlebars. The motion was more than aggressive and sudden enough to throw me off balance. As my body lurched forward, I realised I was flying through the air. My nose caught the whiff of asphalt, telling me I was a moment away from being hurt. Rika! I heard Sadako shriek. No, the sensation I was experiencing was so unreal that I could only say I thought I heard her. I couldn't even figure out if the sight of the car coming towards me as I hurtled through the air was real. But that absence of reality probably only lasted about 1 second. I wasn't even given the time to say, oops. She got out of one deathy time loop, and now she's been run over. I heard the cries of Higurashi in the distance. In those cries dwelt such cool tenderness that I wanted to listen forever. Eventually the silence was broken. The sound of many footsteps approached, pulling my mind back to reality. Suddenly, the cries of the Higurashi were gone. The cries filling the room were that of cicadas. I thought I'd been hearing the Higurashi this whole time. Was that a dream? I was in a bed. I didn't recognize the ceiling. Where was I? The room was small, with an office desk and shelves full of medicine. I recognised the smell of that medicine, and the voices of children mixing with the cicadas' cries. I knew right away. I was at school. I was in bed at the nurse's office. The door opened and Chie appeared. Behind her was Satoko, and... My mind went blank. It was the face of someone who couldn't have been there. Are you alright, Furude-san? Oh, thank goodness. I was really worried. The doctor should be here soon. Please stay in bed until then. Thank goodness. I really was worried. My mind was still blank. Dazed, I kept staring at his face as he spoke words of concern. This person could not possibly be at school in 1983. Satoshi? You okay? You still don't look very good. Stay in bed until the doctor gets here. That aside, Satoko, Hojo-san, where are you hiding? She raised her voice and turned back towards the hallway before Satoko poked her face out, looking as though she was sulking. I didn't throw it that hard. Furude-san is just exaggerating. That isn't how you apologise. Say sorry to Furude-san. I sensed something a little strange about Satoko's tone and mood. In any case, judging by the situation, Satoko had done something to me, and as a result, I'd been carried to the nurse's office. That's how it looked to me. But didn't I pass out after falling off my bike on the way home from Hinamizawa with everyone? Come here, Satoko-san. Chie called Satoko in a firm voice. Chie called Satoko Satoko-san before Satoshi went missing. The only time there were two people named Hojo was when Satoko and Satoshi were both here together. In other words, before June 1982. Then, was this the past? Was it repeating everything again? I felt the chills start to crawl through me. I'd gone through all that hardship to get past June of 1983, and now the world had rewound to the past again. The dead end of June 1983 that I challenged for over 100 years, and finally broke through. Would I have to defeat it again? I certainly learned many things and defeated my fate with certain willpower, but I was also saved by a lot of luck. There was no proof I could challenge June 1983 again and defeat it like I did last time, which meant I was probably hit by that car in the bike accident and killed. And just before dying, I'd rejected death and rewound the world. The way that unrealistic memory cut off was definitely similar to when I'd rewound the world previously. Then would I have to undertake a terribly long journey again? That can't be. The idea was infinitely terrifying. As it dawned upon me, I felt as though my vision was growing distant. I still hadn't fully understood just how terrifying this was just yet. Come, Satoko. You need to apologise. Furude-san, I'm sorry for throwing the ball at you. But you were just standing there and being in the way. Satoko's apology was strange. It wasn't even an apology, really. It literally sounded like an excuse. She looked at Chie and Satoshi, wondering if that was enough. It didn't seem like Satoko had any intention of apologising for throwing the ball at me, because Satoko wasn't even looking at me. Not really. It was like I didn't belong in her world. She'd never treated me this coldly before. And before anything else, she's talking strangely. It didn't seem like the situation that had befallen me was a rewind to so far in the past that Satoshi was still around. Something else had happened. Something bizarre that I didn't understand. That's how I felt as I listened to the odd way Satoko was talking. She sounded far more normal than the Satoko I knew. Satoko made a face like reading out a standard written apology was enough, then ran off into the hallway. I checked the clock. It was right in the middle of afternoon break. She was probably rushing back to the schoolyard because she didn't want to miss any more playtime. As she turned her back on me and ran away, I suddenly felt very cold and sad. If the Satoko I knew had hurt me enough to put me in the nurse's office, she would have stayed with me the entire time. Her footsteps vanished before she'd even looked at me once. It didn't seem like she hated me. It felt like she wasn't even interested. What was happening? What year and what month was it right now, anyway? Hanyu was nowhere to be found. Despite wanting to know, no calendar or anything like one was nearby, so it didn't seem like I could find out right now. Most normal people will give you a strange look if you ask what the year and month were, and I'd learned from my long journey that I had to be careful about that. Instead, I decided to push that question aside for the moment. Sorry, Rika-chan. I'll make sure to talk to Satoko later. I'm sure she asked you to play with her because you seemed lonely. Meep. Thanks. I'm not worried about it anymore, so it's okay. As Satko's older brother Satoshi apologized in her stead, he seemed no different from the Satoshi I knew. Alright. I'm gonna get going then. Thank you, Satoshi. Anytime. Satoshi gave a little wave of his hand, turned, and left the nurse's office. A new set of footsteps approached in his place. From their pace and sound, it wasn't a child. It was probably Coach. Chie had called for him. Ah, Doctor. I'm sorry to call you out so suddenly. She just woke up a few minutes ago. Is that right? That's good, that's good. It was a throaty voice. It wasn't Irie. The man who suddenly appeared was one I'd never seen in the clinic, or even at the Irie Institute. He was a large man with round curves, the exact opposite of Irie. The stubble on his face made him seem rugged. He was so distinct that I wouldn't forget him, even if I'd only met him once. And yet I had no recollection of him. But he was wearing a white robe, and Chie had called him the doctor from the clinic. So he must have been a doctor from the Irie clinic. But I'd never met him before. Hey, Rika-chan. You sure went through a lot. Did the ball hit you in the back of the head? Would you mind if I take a look? Meep. Is he going to have a picture of him? Without waiting for an answer, the mountaineerish doctor felt around the back of my head. Doesn't seem like it. His fingers were uncultured, completely different from Irie's delicate hands. Could you show me your eyes? Yeah, you seem alright. Do you have a headache or anything? Any nausea or dizziness? No. I think you're probably fine then. Just to be sure, we'll take you to the clinic and look at your brainwaves. Still, as far as I can see, there's no problem at all. Gah! The doctor laughed uproariously, spraying spittle everywhere. Chie gave a look of relief too, as if that was a sign there were no problems. I see. Then just to be safe, I'll leave her in your care. Fude-san, please go with the doctor to the clinic. Indeed. You'll be in and out before afternoon hours begin. Let's go! The big doctor, acting too familiar for my tastes, pushed me out the door, and before I could fight my feeling of wrongness, I was taken out of the nurse's office. What was this world? Sometimes the dice came up with strange numbers and caused little differences. But this was the first world that felt this wrong to me. Did the dice rolls turn up something rare? After repeating this world for over 100 years, I thought I'd figured out pretty much every event, and yet this all felt so strange to me. There was something immeasurable about how strange it was, and I couldn't help but feel intensely anxious. I put my shoes on at the entrance before being taken to a parked car in front of the school gate. All the while, I stared at the big man's back as he walked, racking my brains trying to remember him, but I couldn't come up with anything. No matter how much I thought back, I couldn't recall any man like this in the Mountain Dogs, much less the Irie Institute. If Satoshi was here, that meant it had to be before June 1982. Hanyu would always be there as soon as I woke up, and she'd tell me what was going on in that world. But in this world, I haven't seen Hanyu even once. The radiant sunlight, the annoying cicada cries, the lively voices of my classmates, I knew them all so well. But something was different. It almost made me sick. Hanyu, where am I? What kind of world is this? Hanyu didn't answer me. Fine then. If I went home and opened a bottle of wine, she'd be sure to come rushing in. Not once had she ever allowed me a few elegant minutes to myself. Mi-chan, take this. Ha! Too slow. The most important rule of dodgeball is to go for the weaklings. Aiming for me was a tactical mistake. And the next slowest one is you. Fya! Ow! I saw several classmates playing a game of dodgeball. Mion and Rena were there in the crowd. Rena? Any world where Rena was present was later than April 1982, and Satoshi disappeared from the village in June 1982. The only time Rena and Satoshi could be here at the same time was the short span from April to June of 1982. It didn't seem like I'd gone as far into the past as I'd feared, but I still had to repeat the June of 1983. That hadn't changed. Did I have to complete those long, difficult days of nothing but strife yet again? Teaming up with my friends, trusting each other, grappling with our suspicions of each other, believing in miracles, and fighting alongside everyone. And all the coincidences in the world to help save us. If we missed any one of those elements of the process, this world would end in horrific tragedy. I'd forgotten past this dead end before. I'd gotten past it. This was the second time, so I understood a little of how to fight against Takano's group. So I probably wouldn't have to spend another whole 100 years. Even still, it would definitely take several of those years, if not dozens. But I never wanted to spend another day in that June of 1983 ever again. The despair I felt of reaching the goal once, then getting kicked back to the start. Sigh. I got into the man's car, and as it bumped over the rough roads, I sorted out the situation I was in. That day in July 1983, I went to have a good time at the pool with everyone, and on the way home, there was an accident, and I died. And right before dying, I used the power I'd never thought I'd have to use again to turn back time once more. This world was probably in June of 1982. It was considerably hot, so the Watanagashi festival couldn't be far off. That meant the countdown to Satoshi's disappearance had already begun. Earlier in the nurse's office, he'd given me kind and considerate words, but an unyielding darkness would have been starting to take control of his heart, his fear of his inescapable terminal illness's footsteps. I thought back to how the Hojo siblings had looked in the nurse's office, and Satoko and Satoshi's everyday sibling relationship. It would cease to be an everyday thing in just another few days or weeks. Satoko's somewhat cold treatment of me had hurt, but when I remembered that, I felt pity for her. Satoko, for now at least, treasure that time. Your relationship with Satoshi is limited. That cruel fact hadn't been overruled a single time in any of these 100 years of worlds. In other words, it was inevitable. I could only sympathise with the fate awaiting Satoko now. Eventually, the Irie clinic came into view. Every time I saw it, I was struck by its magnificence. It was almost too much for Hinamizawa. But this time, the clinic building felt a little dull, as though affected by the sadness colouring my heart. The car came to a stop in the employee parking lot near the back entrance. Can you walk? You feeling well? Meep. I'm perfectly fine. I don't think I need a brain scan. Head injuries are scary because some take a while to do anything. We'll play it safe and get you scanned. If it's nothing, you can go back for afternoon class. This was the first time I'd met this strange doctor, but he didn't seem unreliable. Maybe the cloudiness in my expression made me look like I was worried my injury was serious, and that was why he tried to cheer me up. His attempt at encouragement was off base, but for now I told myself that he wasn't a bad person at least. The air inside the clinic smelled unfamiliar to me. Inside it was the same clinic as the one I knew, but something was different. On the whole, it felt old, like I'd find cobwebs if I looked. And I recognised none of the nurses we passed. The only people I knew were some elderly villagers chatting as they watched TV in the waiting room. Oh, is that you, Rika-chan? What happened? Do you have a cold? Someone during recess threw a ball and it hit the back of my head. Of her head. Figured we should do a scan to make sure. Head injuries can be scary. But you're young, so I'm sure 1 or 2 balls to the head is nothing. The old people laughed aloud as though rubbing some spit on the bump would fix it. I can't take my mind out of that one. Something about their behaviour was strange too. The people I knew would get out their beads, stop praying, and make a big fuss just because I got a bump on the head. Maybe they'd say 1 or 2 balls is fine. Because you're young. If I were a normal child. But for me in particular, in Hinamizawa, that was impossible. This all seemed very wrong. Something huge, something I couldn't ignore, was different about this world. Rika-chan. Come in, come in. After the large man went straight into the examination room, he called me in. The Queen Carrier had come for an examination, and the next logical step was that Irie, the director, would appear, but he hadn't appeared yet. The discomfort I'd been feeling this whole time got even stronger, and then I spotted something odd. It was a notice from the hospital, hung in the waiting room. Please be sure to bring your insurance card on your first checkup of the month. Takano Clinic. Huh? Takano Clinic? I looked around at the other notices hung about the waiting room. All of them had Takano Clinic written at the end. Not a single one said Irie Clinic. Where am I? Rika-chan, come on in. We're burning daylight. I heard the man's deep voice from the examination room again. I ignored him and burst out the front entrance. Why? Because I wanted to know. To know the name of this clinic. Takano Clinic. It looked exactly like the area clinic I knew. But there it was, the answer to why everything felt so out of place. Where is this? I could feel the strength drained from my body. My legs gave out and I sat, and for a while I stared dumbly up at the name that was inexplicably different. I'm not sure how long I stayed like that. Eventually the big doctor from before and the nurse came running out. They asked me if I suddenly felt sick, and if I didn't answer, they would annoyingly get even more concerned. So, somewhat offhandedly, I lied that I felt a little dizzy for a moment. But they must have thought the vertigo pointed to a symptom of something. They picked me up and brought me into the examination room, hooked me up to an EEG terminal, and told me to rest. Meep. It's really nothing. I thought this would be annoying, so I tried to run away. Then I tripped and fell. It's the doctor's job to decide if it's nothing. Please lay down until I say it's okay. Understand? I felt like the more I tried to say, the more complicated things would get, so for now, I decided to play along so I could get out of there. Doctor? Is there a doctor named Irie there? What? Who did you say? Irie. Irie? Is that your family doctor, Rika-chan? What hospital does he work at? We're getting nowhere. It's Irie not in this world. Compared to everything the other adults, like Akasaka and Kasai did during the long battle of June 19th, Irie's presence might have seemed to matter little, but it was extremely important that he was around. Without his determination to sever the chain of sadness created by Hinamizawa syndrome, there was essentially no way for Hinamizawa to break free of its 1,000-year curse. And Irie wasn't here. Plus, Irie was my only ally, who I knew was the Queen Carrier. Who knew I was. Oh shit. That ally was gone. The strange way Sadako was talking, the absence of my only ally from Tokyo, Irie. No doubt some unpleasant die had landed on a one. Then despite my ally, Irie not being here, was Takano still behind everything? When you get one bad roll, you get a bunch more. Dr. Takano passed away quite a while ago. The name comes from that splendid doctor who built such a wonderful clinic in this village. Someone I never had the chance to meet, but a splendid doctor if there ever was one, I hear. A splendid doctor? Would the occult-obsessed Takano ever be praised as a splendid doctor? And she passed away a while ago? When I looked around the examination room, I found a picture of some old people hanging in a frame. On it was written, founder and first director, Hifumi Takano. Hifumi Takano? Wasn't that the man Takano looked up to, who she called her grandfather? He was the first one to discover the Hinamizawa syndrome, but nobody accepted his theories about it, and he passed away in despair. Takano had understood his chagrin, and eventually made a big decision, then began to build a future so stable you could call it fate. That Takano? Another person named Takano? Not the founder? Can't say I know him. None of the nurses are named that anyway. Maybe it was an old nurse who retired before I got here? I don't think so. She's a young woman. There's nobody here by that name. If there was a nurse like that, I definitely want her to work here. Yeah. The man guffawed with delight. He certainly didn't look like he was lying. He was speaking the truth. Then even Takano is gone. Irie was absent. Takano was absent. The Irie Institute didn't have its director or vice director. What did all that mean? Who's the director then? Oh, and what about the mountain dogs? The Irie Institute was, at its heart, a research institution. Without them acting as its hands and feet, it couldn't exist. Is there a landscaping company here called Okanogi Gardeners? Huh? Landscapers? Couldn't tell you. Never had to call one of them myself. Wouldn't really know. Where are they from? Oh, I thought they had an office in Akanamaya. Why not look them up in a phone book later? Individual people sometimes don't show up in them, but I think most companies should be in there. Could the Irie Institute not exist in this world? Would that mean this world didn't have a dead end? At all? I couldn't figure anything out. Which dice were showing 1 and which were showing 6? Or was the stranger part the dots on the dice themselves? The game board I was a piece on now, and the game board I knew, were they different? Let's be a little more optimistic. Was it possible that Tokyo hadn't chosen Irie, but this man instead? Then would this man know I was the Queen Carrier? If he did, then a number of things would fall into place. The prudence of giving me a brain scan after just getting knocked over by a ball to the head. Wasn't that because he knew I was special, that I was the Queen Carrier? Then was this man playing the role of Irie in this world? I looked at the name tag on the robe he put on after coming into the room and read the name. Yamamoto. Yes. It was a natural response. It seemed the name Yamamoto wasn't a problem. Was this Yamamoto person the director of the Irie Institute, or rather, the Yamamoto Institute? It was also possible that he'd crowned this clinic with a Takano name in commemoration of him succeeding Hifumi Takano's research. Yamamoto, do you know what the Hinamizawa syndrome is? Hinamizawa what? Do you know about me being the Queen Carrier or anything? Queen? Rika-chan, you seem to me like you're still a princess. Do you want to be a queen when you grow up? You dream big. Okay, there we go. You can take it off now. I learned from just that short exchange that Yamamoto had nothing to do with the Hinamizawa syndrome. There were a few people unconnected to Tokyo in the Irie Institute too, but there were only a small handful of nurses and office workers, and besides, the Queen Carrier was currently in a clinic. Anyone connected to the Hinamizawa syndrome would have come rushing to me. Yamamoto had rushed to me, but he didn't know I was the Queen Carrier. What did that mean? I listened hard to try and catch the sound of Irie's indiscreet laughter, but all I heard was the TV in the waiting room and the motor of the goldfish aquarium. That maid-obsessed man with his ulterior motives during checkups was nowhere to be seen in the examination room. It was as simply uncomfortable, and the smells, dust and medicine made me feel unpleasant. Now I knew. This really wasn't the clinic I knew. It wasn't just a strange feeling anymore, it was a clear fact now. Yamamoto left for a moment, then came back and told me there was nothing wrong with my readings. If you feel alright, you can go back to school now. Afternoon class will start soon, so I can take you there if you need a ride. Can you go to school yourself? Meep. Meep isn't a yes or no. What shall it be? But she says it for everything. Yes. I'm fine, I can go back to school myself. I see. Then get going. I'll call Chie-sensei and tell her you're coming back. Oh. When I saw Yamamoto pick up the phone on the table, I spotted a tabletop calendar next to it. Ooh, here we go. When is it? June. Showa 58. Showa 58? What was that in AD again? The Pacific War ended in Showa 20, which was 1945. 58 minus 20. I'm bad at borrowing, but luckily I don't need it. 58 minus 20 equals 38. Yes, 38 plus 20 is definitely 58. Then if you add 38 to 1945, is 83. It's 1983. June? Wasn't that the same period of time I had just been living in? But, huh? That's impossible. In 1983, Satoshi is here. And Irie isn't here. Takano isn't here. Satoko is acting strangely. And even Hanyu is gone. Where am I? Hanyu, I know you're wasting time somewhere. Get over here with your ows and tell me what kind of world this is. I walked through downtown on my way back to school. All the storefronts were familiar, nothing had changed. But for some reason, there were less people, and more stores with their shutters closed. This apparent state of decline reminded me of New Year's or New Year's Eve. It was a strange sight during the season when you could hear cicadas crying. I love the sound of the cicadas crying. It reminds me a lot of Animal Crossing. I got a lot of memories with those games. I barely passed anyone, and even when old people walked by, they didn't talk to me. Normally if I met an old person in the middle of the day like this, they'd ask if I had a cold and was staying home from school, or they'd start rubbing their prayer beads and saying weird things. There was none of that. Just like the old people in the clinic, they reacted with disinterest. I wasn't in the mood for it anyway, so I was thankful they didn't do any of that. But there was already a heap of oddities before me, and I couldn't help but feel like it was growing even bigger. Afternoon break was long over by the time I got back to school, and it was now time for afternoon classes. I went through the entrance and changed into my slippers. And then I noticed another strange thing. There were a lot of empty shoe cubbies. Empty was different from absent. Anyone enrolled would leave either slippers or regular footwear in their locker, no matter what. If neither were present, that meant they weren't in this class to begin with. Sometimes people took their slippers home to wash during the weekends, but any lockers being empty during the day was unthinkable. I counted a little over 10 pairs of shoes. That was only half of how many people were in the school I knew. Everything was so messed up, I had no idea what was going on. I steeled myself and opened the classroom door. Everyone turned around to look at me. There truly were only half the familiar classmates there, and they weren't absent, because only half as many seats were actually in the classroom. Fude-san, please take your seat. Looks pretty full to me in the picture. Alright everyone, this is class time, so focus on your drills. Cheer clapped their hands, and everyone looked back down at their desks and workbooks, ignoring me altogether. My seat. Satoshi was sitting at the desk next to Sato's. That didn't seem to be my seat. Then where was it? Soon I found an open seat, looking small and quiet in the back near the window. I could tell from the pattern of the floor cushion with my disaster hood in it. That seemed to be Rika Furude's seat in this world. It was in the corner, as though the classroom had forgotten about it. There were no seats next to it, and nobody would see it when looking at the blackboard. In a place where I wouldn't block anyone's view, whether or not I wasn't here. That seat was almost symbolic of how I'd been feeling ever since I awoke. I sat down and took out my workbook, then pretended to study. I looked around the classroom. Mion Sonozaki was here. She didn't seem very different. Rena Ryugu was here too. The way she was helping the child in the next seat over with his work was very like her. Satoko and Satoshi were studying together as friendly siblings. Satoshi, being the older brother, was teaching her things, but Satoko looked disgruntled, and his words went in one ear and out the other. To me, it was almost like she didn't hate studying, she just didn't like their roles being reversed, since she looked after him at home, and it made me smile a little. I still felt a tiny pain in my chest from Satoko's cold treatment of me in the nurse's office, but as far as I could tell by looking at her individually, she seemed totally normal. But I still couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong there. When Satoko was with Satoshi, she was often gloomy because of problems at home or their aunt's abuse, so they were acting like normal siblings, and though I knew it was rude to Satoko, that felt wrong. But if Satoko had a normal life, that was fine. The bigger shock, though, was the absence of the most important person in our group of friends. I looked around the room several times for him, but he wasn't here. Keiichi Maebara wasn't here. I made multiple excuses, like I wasn't seeing right, or he happened to be absent today. But even the list of students on cleaning duty hanging on the wall didn't have Keiichi's name on it. Everyone in the class would have had their names on there, but Keiichi's wasn't. Keiichi Maebara did not exist in this classroom, even though it was June of 1983 in this world. I see. On rare occasions there would be a world where Keiichi hadn't moved here. It wasn't the first time, but it was a sad thing. Keiichi was an important key to crushing the fate of June 1983. If he wasn't on the game board, then this game was predetermined to be a loss. But was this even a game at all? No Irie, no Takano, no signs of the Institute from Tokyo researching Hinamizawa syndrome. If none of them were here, didn't that mean there was nobody at all to fight? If I didn't need to fight, then, in a sense, Keiichi's absence wasn't an issue. Actually, in this case, June 1983 wasn't fated to be a dead end, and, in other words, in this world, the 1,000 dice all turned up ones, and that changed that absolute fate Takano had constructed with her certain willpower into something else. I had no idea what was what. Could this world even be explained by what dots came up on the dice? Where am I? Someone tell me. Obviously unable to focus during class, my head was filled with the listless cries of the cicadas and the feeling of being out of place that I couldn't get rid of. Everybody stand up. Bow. Goodbye. Thankfully, Mion was still class president. For some reason, that was a relief. Oh, was there even a club in this world? If I could receive the baptism of those crazy club games, maybe it would clear up my feelings a bit. On days we had club, she'd always call all the members right when school ended. Expecting that, I stayed in my seat as everyone ran out into the hallway. Satoko was one of those who dashed out. She was flying headlong towards the entrance, jostling the other kids her age. Satoshi left too, following behind her. Mion and Rena talked to each other as they got ready to leave. As far as it looked, we didn't have a club. or club, today. The club was annoying at times, but I yearned for it so much now. Was there no club in this world? As I started to feel lonely, I saw a grin spread across Mion's face before she and Rena approached me. Normally that grin would look gross, but when Mion did it, it didn't feel bad. Our eyes met. Thank goodness. Even this world had the after-school club we were supposed to. Hey, Rika-chama. Got a moment before you go home? Meep, is it club? For the first time since coming to this world, I smiled. I had no idea what was going on in this world, so having one of my hopes come true made me very happy for the moment. No, not that. You're on duty tomorrow, right? Here's the logbook. And club, huh? What? Did you want to be in my club too, Rika-chan? Meep. I gleaned two things from Mion's few words. One was that I still wasn't a club member. The other was that, even so, the club still existed. For me, right now, that was an incredibly happy thought. Then Rika Fude, I hereby grant you permission to join my club. Me-chan, you're being weird. Rena laughed like it was a funny joke, but why? But even if you're in the same club, you still can't do club things with us. Why not? I mean, your house and my house are in opposite directions, right? Meep? Oh. When Mion said her club, she probably meant the club of not having a club, the going home club. And she must have been saying we went home in different directions, which is why I couldn't do club activities, going home together with her. In other words, the club doesn't exist in this world either. Mi-chan, can't we have club activities with Rika-chan once in a while? But we're going opposite directions. Maybe it's okay from time to time, maybe. After I realised I'd have to go home all alone, Rena said she'd leave school with me. That kind consideration was just like the Rena I knew so well. We didn't have club, but Mion and Rena were still Mion and Rena. Sorry, but I'll have to pass. I gotta get back quick for my job at my uncle's place. Oh. Then Rika-chan and I will have our after-school going-home club. Thank you, Rena. The three of us headed for the entrance. Our outdoor shoes were the only ones left. There are less slippers here than I remember. I decided to naturally mention it. Rena responded right away. It's lonely, but what can we do? As they say, you gotta look for a nice big tree when you seek shelter. Anyway, sorry about this, but I'm gonna get going. I'll leave Rika-chan's escort to you, Reina. Okay. Did she just say it? Reina? Yes? What is it? Nothing. Rena was the kind Rena I knew, but her name wasn't Rena. Reina. That was Rena's real name, but in the worlds I knew, she'd thrown it aside. Which meant she hadn't given up being Reina. Or her path leading to today was different from the one in the worlds I knew. I knew Rena hated herself because she considered herself responsible for her mother's divorce. And as she'd messed up both her life and herself, she would have decided to part ways with that old self, start over, and rename herself Rena. But that didn't happen. That wasn't the only thing I learned from this conversation either. Regarding the number of people in the class. When I mentioned there weren't many people, they acted like there was a reason. That meant the current number of students in this world hadn't been that way from the start. It had decreased to this number. Mion ran off, and Rena and I left school together. When we went across the schoolyard, I saw Satoko fooling around playing tag. You looking at Satoko-chan? Meep. Her name was different, but she still picked up on these things quickly. I'm sure Satoko-chan wasn't trying to be mean when she hit you with a ball. Forgive her, okay? I don't really mind. Reina seemed to be trying to smooth it over. It kind of sounded like Satoko and I weren't normally friendly with one another. So I asked, are Satoko and I not friends? Of course you are. You're both in the same class. I mean... The way she said that was enough of an answer. Now I knew why Satoko acted so coldly to me in the nurse's office. In this world, Satoko and I weren't friends. Maybe that made sense. After all, if Satoshi was alive and well, then Satoko would spend all her time with him. The reason Satoko and I got to the point we could call close was because Satoko ended up all alone. I asked her to stay at my house, and we started living together. Of course, we were friends before that too, just nowhere near how close we were in 1983. Maybe in the end our relationship was nothing more than me sitting in Satoshi's empty seat, When I thought about that, when I considered what would happen if Satoshi was around in June 1983, maybe this was the most natural future. With regretful eyes, I watched as Sadako frolicked about. Sadako looked like she was having a lot of fun with her other classmates. She wouldn't even ever notice me going home from school. I'm gonna stop thinking about it so much. Before the true world I need to reach, this world is all but a defective one. I don't need to bother trying to understand a broken world. There's a lot less stores open too. When we went through downtown, with all its stores with their shutters down, Reina spoke up. I didn't care about this world anymore, but as a classmate going home with her, I answered unconsciously. I wonder why so many closed up. It only makes sense. They can only do business until next year anyway. They're getting less and less customers too. It's not strange that some would want to close up shop early. Why won't they do business after next year? They can't. They're getting evicted. Evicted? It sucks, but there's nothing we can do. And even if the village sinks, it won't destroy our souls, the ones that belong here. I gave a start when I heard that. That couldn't. No, it was possible. In every single world, the story of Hinamizawa being submerged under an artificial lake was always present. But the Irie Institute, working from the shadows, would make sure that the dam project was cancelled. If there was no Irie Institute around to make them cancel it, that meant the dam project was proceeding as planned, and then the dam will... I heard they decided to flood this area next year. I think it'll take quite a few days to submerge, but I don't really want to watch. Maybe after it's all a lake, but watching it go under would be sad. Wasn't anyone opposed to it? At first they were. But we can't be selfish when it comes to helping the nation grow. I don't really understand, but apparently the government people were really nice and talked to us a lot about it. The dam conflict I was hearing from Reina wasn't even a conflict in this world. Everything regarded the dam was completely different from the worlds I knew. They proposed the Hinamizawa Dam project, which was the same as the worlds I knew. Relations between the nation who wanted to evict us and the residents who refused gradually worsened and eventually broke down. It snowballed into a dire conflict over the dam. But in this world, it had been different from the very beginning. First off, relations between the country and the village were stormy at the very beginning, but apparently that was resolved quickly. The Sonzaki and Kimiyoshi families negotiated on the village's behalf and they accepted the eviction on the promise of a large sum of compensation money. After that, the conversation was between the three families and the villagers. Nobody wanted to part with the soil of their ancestors, but for the villagers who certainly couldn't be called wealthy, the money the nation would provide was no trivial matter. They worried over it to no end. Rumours flew about, wondering if Oyashiro-sama's curse would befall them if they abandoned these lands. But the Furude family head, my father in other words, declared we couldn't be cursed if we built the Shiro-sama a new shrine somewhere else, and remembered to honour him. Despite many objections, the elderly agreed on a cooling off period of several years. In addition to the compensation money, they demanded from the government the movement of the Furude shrine, the graveyard and its symbolic trees, in addition to the guarantee of a new place they called Hinamizawa. And if those requests were fulfilled, they would consider agreeing to the eviction. The nation consented to this. They proposed preferential occupation rights of reclaimed public housing land in Shishibone. With regards to giving the town a new name, they considered the residents' proposal as most important. They consented to the movement of the shrine, graveyard and other locations as well. In conclusion, though there were several years of turmoil, the dam conflict never happened in this world. Everything was resolved through talking alone, and the villagers had actually agreed to the dam project. Actual construction on the dam had begun a few years ago, and apparently construction vehicles were a constant source of traffic on the village's wider roads. And the eviction deadline was set at the end of April next year, so more than a few families had begun moving out in advance. One closed shop's shutter had a worn paper notice on it. On it was written, "Our deepest gratitude for your many years of patronage." I spotted a few other notices with "opposed to the dam" on them, but those had deteriorated over time, a silent indication that the dam war was a thing of the past now. I think all the kids in class are moving into the public housing. Sadako-chan's family is supposedly moving somewhere else. It's a little lonely to think we won't be able to see all our friends after next year. Meep. The village I was born and grew up in being submerged was very sad. But all my classmates, enjoying this day to the fullest, even though they knew that, seemed so strong to me. And if the dam war never took place, that would cause several other effects. For example, the relationship between the Sonzaki and the Hojo families. At the beginning of the dam conflict, the Hojos declared themselves in favour of the dam, with the Sonzakis in opposition, and the former ended up a scapegoat of the village for a long time. But that trouble never occurred in this world. Sadako-chan's family? I don't know. I think they're normal. I don't think they have much particularly in common with Mi-chan's family. Does Sadako get along with her family? Oh, you mean her father? Even without the dam conflict, the presence of a stepfather would be a burden on Sadako's mind. And with the L5 symptoms appearing, she would push him from the viewing platform at the park and be given into the care of her malicious aunt and uncle. Because her stepfather's presence would be the very gateway to Sadako's later unfortunate fate. When I think about it now, maybe their awkwardness with each other at first made for a good memory. They aren't connected by blood, so they tried hard to be father and daughter, and maybe now they have a stronger bond than she would with her biological parents. I've talked to them a bunch of times, but he's a good person that works hard to support his family. I mean Sadako's current father? Yep. Which meant in this world, none of the dice threatening Sadako had come up on a 1. For Sadako, did that make this world a happy place for her? My walk home with Reina was very significant for me understanding this world, and I found out that this world's composition betrayed every last bit of my common sense. The reason Reina wasn't Rena. That was different from the very start. First, the Ryugu family didn't move to Ibaraki. They had lived in Hinamizawa this entire time. Her mother was still working as a designer at a small company in the city. Her father had switched careers, and now he was a salesman for his wife's designs. The couple must have been on good terms, for one to design things and the other to sell them. As always, her mother's position seemed to be stronger, but the relationship was an average one, and divorce, at the very least, seemed impossible. That meant a nice peaceful family for Reina. That satisfied her fully, and she even said that she lived a happy life. The fact that she knew that without going through hardships though, she really was still Rena. I asked about the Takano clinic too. It was as the big Dr. Yamamoto had said. The Takano of Takano Clinic was indeed the one who had been Mayo Takano's adopted grandfather, Ifumi Takano. Right after the war, he built a surprisingly grand clinic in Hinamizawa, which had no doctors and became a celebrity to the villagers. I learned that there was a monument dedicated to Takano in the place of the one dedicated to Irie in the worlds I knew. After Takano's passing, there was nobody to succeed his place in the clinic, and for a long time it had been left empty. That was when a man from Okinawa named Yamamoto arrived and breathed new life into the clinic. Takano had discovered the Hinamizawa syndrome and searched for research sponsors, but found none. And eventually Mayo Takano would succeed him, but what if the older Takano had found a sponsor? Neither Mayo Takano nor Irie would appear, and the Takano clinic being built right after the war would make sense, which meant the Takano in this world had been blessed with good dice rolls. At this point, I had a vague idea about something. Weren't these dice rolls the exact opposite of the ones for the world I knew well? The people themselves hadn't changed at all. But the dice god had cast for these people were all reversed. So it made sense that it had turned into such a strange world for me. I learned one more thing from talking to Reina too. In this world, I had no friends, I was all alone. Kaiichi never transferred to our school, we didn't have a club, and Sadako had no connection to me. So maybe it was only natural. At that point, I finally realised why Reina had sympathised with me going home alone and done her going home club activities with me. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. Huh? Oh, I see. For a moment I was confused when she said goodbye, since we weren't in front of the temple, but I quickly understood. We're in front of the Furude main house. Since Takano never appeared, there's no Irie Institute, nor any research into Hinamizawa syndrome, and so, my parents never died. At first my parents cooperated with the researchers, but when I fell ill with a high fever one day, they stopped cooperating, had some kind of trouble, and were assassinated. My mother was the hysterical type. When she made a fuss, settling her down took a while. And because she made a fuss, the Irie Institute, which wanted to do its research in secret, naturally wanted to make sure she didn't talk. She'd held such an attitude even knowing how shady the Institute was. So in a sense, I couldn't deny that she reaped what she sowed. In any case, no matter how many times I did this over, no matter how many times I warned her, it never worked, and I had resigned myself to the fact that I'd no longer have parents by 1981. And I'd repeated it many times. I'd seen my parents for dozens of years in total, so I was fed up with them. We weren't on good terms to begin with anyway. And now in June of 1983, they were here again. I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye bye. Goodbye. Nipa. After seeing Rainer off, I looked at my real home. I saw my mother patting out the dried fruit on in the yard. In normal worlds, they would always die, but in this one, they were alive the whole time. I found myself unsure of how to talk to my real mother. And we're gonna leave it off here. I don't know when the chapter breaks are gonna work in this one, because it's not like the other arcs and everything, so I'm gonna leave it off here. If we do reach a chapter break next time, then, you know, we'll just carry on going or something, I don't know. So, this has been Greeny XI. I hope you've enjoyed being back in Hinamizawa. I can't see it being a long arc, because it is one of the ones I was imagining, and that means that we're making really good progress. It's not repeating itself like a lot of the other arcs and his other work. So yeah, I think it's going to be pretty short. So that's probably why they put 3 arcs in one. Anyways, thanks again for watching, folks. See you again in a bit.